We want to turn our focus now to the southern border. The number of migrant deaths recorded by U.S. Border Patrol is at an all-time high. This comes as the number of migrant crossings have been trending down lately after hitting record highs. CBS News immigration reporter Camilo Montoya-Galvez traveled to the Arizona desert to join volunteers looking for missing migrants in one of the most remote and deadliest parts of the border.
Bien, gracias. Camilo, mucho gusto.
Ernesto. Mucho gusto.
The search began in the dark at this parking lot. As the sun emerged above a beautiful yet often deadly landscape in the Sonoran Desert, the volunteers huddled and prayed.
Te doy gracias, Señor.
They call themselves the Armadillos, a nod to the tough mammals, and they scour the most rugged sections of the U.S. Mexico border looking for migrants. We joined them as they search for Jose Salinas Pineda, a 21-year-old Mexican man who crossed into Arizona in early June and was never heard from again.
We have about a dozen volunteers who are about to come with us into the desert to try to look for his body and maybe bring his family some closure.
With the sun beaming and the temperatures rising, Roberto Resendiz, a full-time construction worker, led the search, made possible by hiking gear, lots of water, and walkie-talkies.
So you still think there's a chance he could be alive?
There's a chance, Resendiz told us, as migrants are sometimes found alive.
But it's a long time to be missing for, right?
Sí, es mucho tiempo ahorita lo que...
It's a long time.
Sí, es mucho tiempo.
Most migrants crossing the U.S. Mexico border actively look for Border Patrol agents to begin the asylum process, but some try to evade detection and capture by crossing in remote and rugged stretches of the border, just like this one in Arizona, where the chances of perishing are greater than in other areas. The United Nations actually calls this border the deadliest land border in the world.
And official figures back that up. Border Patrol has reported record levels of migrant deaths over the past years, including nearly 900 in fiscal year 2022, an all-time high. In the Arizona desert, the dangers of the journey were clear. Over 9 hours, we traversed 12 miles of desolate cactus-filled terrain with little shade to escape the triple-digit heat. We found a bone and items abandoned by migrants. But there was no sign of Salinas Pineda.
Humanitarian aid is not a crime.
Volunteer Gustavo Sanchez-Bachman says helping migrants like Salinas Pineda stay alive should transcend political divisions on immigration.
They get here, they're tired, they're weak, and they die some of the most difficult deaths you can imagine. Dehydration, exposure to heat. And so it's important for us to do this work to try to provide some relief, some aid, and some sense of humanity.
Humanity, we found, can still thrive in places like this, despite the unforgiving conditions.
We tracked down the sister of Salinas Pineda in Mexico, and she is still desperately trying to find and locate her brother, who has been missing since early June after he crossed into the U.S. illegally. She also told us that the reason that he traveled to the U.S. was to chase the American dream, and we found that that American dream can sometimes end tragically in places like the Sonoran Desert. Lindsay?
Camilo, why has there been an uptick in migrant deaths in recent years?
Well, Lindsay, if you ask U.S. officials and Customs and Border Protection officers, they will tell you that this increase in the number of people dying trying to enter the U.S. reflects an overall increase in the number of migrants crossing the U.S. Mexico border in the first place. The more people crossing the border, that argument goes, the more people are unfortunately and tragically going to die attempting to do so. But some advocates did tell us, Lindsay, that they believe U.S. government policy is also playing a role. They believe that harsher asylum regulations like those issued by President Biden in early June are pushing migrants and asylum seekers to cross in more dangerous and remote areas of the border where the chances of perishing are higher. They do that, Lindsay, to try to avoid detection and avoid being deported back to Mexico under the more stringent rules. But what is objectively true, Lindsay, is that some of the terrain here is very hostile. We walked for several hours and we were exhausted by the end of the day.
Well, that leads me to my next question, Camilo. Are these volunteers facing physical and emotional harm themselves?
Some of them do, and we know that most of these volunteers are immigrants themselves, and the reason they do this work, Lindsay, is to try to help fellow immigrants. But yes, they told us that this does take an emotional toll on them, and that they have to also deal with the trauma that some of the migrants do as well, and they also have to deal with the heartbreak when they listen to the families of those who have died or have gone missing in the desert, because these are the volunteers who first contact the families of those who are missing in the desert. So yes.
The Armadillos. All right, Camilo Montoya-Galvez, thank you.